Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives, and my next two guests' contribution to the pop music lexicon are unparalleled, having worked on Madonna's records and live tours, including Who's That Girl, the Blonde Ambition Tour, the Drowned World Tour, and let's not forget perhaps the greatest rock and roll documentary ever made, Truth or Dare. Please welcome to the stage Nikki Harris and Donna Lory, better known as Nikki and Donna.
Hello.
No, it's so great to be here with you.
Oh my God! No, my dog was. I'm sorry. He thought
I have to go get my dogs.
The dog wants to be part of it.
He thought the hands were for him. Okay, Calvin, down. Goodbye.
I mean, I've always had this analogy in my mind. It very much felt like Diana Ross and the Supremes.
Wow.
Right? I mean, like, the three
as
of
a black
you,
girl from Michigan, thank you.
I mean, the three of you together, the collective voice, the blend, the harmonies. I feel like, you know, Madonna really doesn't collaborate or at least perform live with a lot of women, maybe ever since. And so, and you were there for so long, like 20
Say it again first.
I mean, what we're gonna go, listen, this is gonna be very like, this is your life, like we're gonna start.
I'm really grateful though. I'm really grateful for it. It's interesting you said that, because the fact that Donna and I still get to sing together is such an amazing testament to, one, the smarts that Madonna had for putting us together. Two, the testament to because we were there for so long together, the growth that we all got to experience together from our 20s, 30s, 40s, leading into, you know, these years.
How did the two of you suddenly rejoin forces to record and tour together? What was the source of inspiration that, like, somebody's idea was, let's cover Rain and see what happens? Whose
Donna's idea? Donna's idea.
What was the spark of inspiration that it should be that song and you should cover it?
Fans were reaching out on internet, because I'm such a dinosaur. I was hardly ever on the internet, and she was reading all these things. You want to tell the story, or should I'm going to? Because you know me, I can go on. So tell the story of how.
I was reading the comments. You know, there was a YouTube video that was up of the three of us sitting on our stools singing Rain during the Girly Show tour. And I was reading the comments. I couldn't believe how many comments there were. And I was just reading and just feeling that love. And I was just getting so emotional and remembering how much that meant to me as well. Those moments and realizing, like, the simplicity of just sitting there and looking in each other's eyes and singing. I mean, I remember in that moment thinking, like, this is so deep right now. Are we all feeling this, you know? And I don't think I ever asked Madonna, like, what did that mean to you that we could just sit down and look at each other in those moments? But it was just it was a feeling, and it was a vibe. And to know that the audience was feeling that as well, and that connection was really powerful. And I take those comments to heart in such a deep way, you know, and I listen to people's suggestions, and that's what we're here for. You know,
I would even venture to say that maybe somebody else, Madonna, maybe listen to some of those comments too, because it's just not by chance that she's decided to basically make the celebration tour. It's really a sing-along. You know, it's no band, no singers. It's just her singing these songs. You know, it's the original us singing those songs.
We're gonna get it. Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this. We'll get back to Rain and the EP you guys recorded. What was your reaction when you saw that she opens the tour, her brand new tour, she opens it with Nothing Really Matters?
And that's the way we end our show. End our show.
It's interesting. I mean, it's such a great song, and it's like one of those songs that's a fan favorite. And that was something we wanted to put on our show, because once again, it's not one of her huge iconic hits, but it's a great song. And we once again, like, we were on the record, our sound is on there. But we had that experience in the studio of just Nikki and I in the studio are magical together, you know, and
coming up with those parts, her letting us go, just, you know, what do you hear here? All that kind of stuff. That's what that song was about. Simplicity, but each part and the message is so right for right now. It's time. It's a timeless message.
Perfect. And when I put the chart up and I was reading the chords and going through it and everything, it's Pat Leonard. I mean, it's simple, but it's so brilliant, the music, and it's timeless.
Most brilliant things, great things and brilliant things are pretty simple. It's like, do unto others.
I mean, your vocals are heard in the live show. She's using your.
I know, that's the thing. Someone sent me a clip and I was listening to it and I was like, and I didn't put my headphones on because I thought I have to come back to this, put my headphones on. But right away, it seemed like we come in right away. And yeah, I mean, I definitely thought that was interesting, but it's undeniable. I mean, we have a great sound and we, I mean, I'm sure she knows that, it's like we compliment each other so well. So
we do. Yeah.
We're enjoying it even though we're not there.
I want to hear each of your origin stories into the universe of Madonna, because this is what unites you. This is your shared history. Where were each of you in your careers when this sort of pivotal moment struck, where I guess you had the opportunity to audition? The time frame here is the Who's That Girl tour. So we're talking 1987. She already had obviously self-titled, Like a Virgin, and True Blue were already out. And she was about to tour in sort of honor of the Who's That Girl movie, to which there was a soundtrack as well. Enter Nikki and Donna. Where are you in your lives? What is happening that you wind up in the room and you wind up signing a contract that's about to change your life?
Donna first?
Yeah, Donna, you go ahead.
My boyfriend at the time, Gardner Cole, I met him in the studio as a keyboard player. We were both doing a demo. And he was teamed up with a guy named Peter Rafelson, and they were songwriting and that they were trying to get a lot of songs to artists. He was an artist on Warner Brothers, and he had big management that was in with all the Warner Brothers people. So he wrote the song Open Your Heart. He put his voice on it. He pitched it to Warner's
when you say he put his voice on, you mean he sang the demo?
He sang it because he wrote the song. And Peter, I think, did too. Like, they just put the songwriters a lot of times just put their voices on demos if they have a direct in to an artist or a record company, So they did that, and it was turned down by her. So then I come in, and of course it's a no-brainer. I'm his girlfriend. I'm in his life. They hired me for $50 to go into the studio in Woodland Hills. We went in there. I sang the song. I got to carry it around on my little demo tape to try to go get a record deal for a few months because they hadn't heard back yet. They pitched it to Warner's and to her management and everything. Hadn't heard back. And I'm thinking like, ooh, I'm going to get it with this song and with all my other little demos that I sang on my cassette. And then he let me know that she was going to be cutting the song. And
what did you,
I was happy.
How did you change the song Open Your Heart? What did you change in your performance on the demo from your boyfriend's initial take on it? What did you bring to it? Because it clearly must have, aside from it being a woman's voice, did you change any of the melody, any of the lyrics?
I don't know I oftentimes, when I did demos, I would change little words here and there because I had to kind of memorize it and sing it and perform it. But I remember like, open your heart to me. That's something that we changed that maybe wasn't on their thing. And it's interesting when you sing a demo, I'm sure Nikki knows this. Sometimes you hear that the artist did something so different from the way you sang it, or sometimes it's like note for note. And I felt like when I did hear Madonna's, like, I mean, the notes were they were written like spot on, and she stayed with it the way I sang it, I thought. I mean, there were little things that we were tweaking, like One Is Such a Lonely Number. The original version had Two Can Be Free If You Would Only. That was the end of the bridge. And so she changed it to just things like that. She knew her
That's
vibe.
very Pat Leonard. That's very Pat Leonard.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So it was great. I was really happy for him. I didn't at that time realize like how big it was going to be and how much money he was going to make and everything. And the great thing is that I got that introduction to Pat from that demo. And I got to sing, like, I did demos for like Jody Watley and all these artists that he was working with.
And so,
it's such a long story.
So cut to it's audition time for the tour. Who does Pat Leonard pull you in to think maybe you'd be And also, how did he know that you're also like, were they looking for a combination singer dancer?
He didn't know I was a dancer also.
Okay.
And I just had that training. I just had it under my belt, you know, and I mean, I feel like I had that potential, and I used to tell him, I used to be at his house doing these demos and singing on records, and I knew about the tour. So I was like, Pat, and I didn't want to be too pushy, but I kept reminding him, like, and I'd be like dancing in front of him and everything. I'm like, I can dance too, and everything. And he's like, she already hired the girls. It's a done deal, you know? So, and then I'd ask another month later, well, how's it going? So one day he just called me and said, one of the girls isn't working out. Would you be available to come meet Madonna? You know, are you available? And it's like, sure. So drop everything you're doing. And it's a funny story. That whole day, how I picked out my clothes and I got a makeup artist, and I just felt like it was such a good job for me. And I needed to, after going to so many Hollywood auditions and not getting things, I was like, this is the one I'm getting. So I really prepared for it. He called me, and I ended up having to audition with all these LA singers, you know, but I knew if I could just get through that first part of auditioning, which was just the singing, that I'd be able to pull out my dancing. Yeah. So that.
And what did you?
It's a whole long story.
Well, so for the audition, when you so what was it like when? Was she in the, like, what does she look like? What's your first impression of her? Like, what is she wearing? What does she look like? Like, how is she running the room?
We were waiting upstairs. Nikki, do you remember it was at SIR, the one that had it was like rehearsal place?
Remember, my
now hear it all. Okay, but
my
later on,
thing
it's like
is totally different. Donna was already.
Everything's
on.
totally different, but
yeah,
I
had 5 days. I had 5 days to learn everything.
Yeah, I know.
Songs,
I know you came in later.
Dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't. So I don't know what that process was. I just knew. I knew I was a quick study, and at that point, I was always working. I knew I would always have a job because I was a quick study. I had been working for Disney for years. I did, you know, I was already on the road with the Righteous Brothers. I'd done Anita, did Whitney's first record, but I never really only had to use the dance stuff a lot with for the Disney stuff. So, and I got a call when I was in Vegas, and Bill Medley came to my room and said, Freddie Demand's looking for you. Can you fly out? And I'm like, but I'm working. He goes, just go do the audition. I think she's going to be big. And I flew in, and literally Anita Baker's musical director, Bobby Lyle, picked me up from the airport and brought me to the audition. And I thought it was an audition for me. Hello. And
I remember that, Bob.
And I remember being really like, I don't really know this stuff. And I was like studying, you know, like back in the cassette tape days. And I was like, just learned it in the car, came there. And for me, it was really simple music. So I was like, this is going to be a piece of cake. And still wasn't even sure if I really wanted necessarily the gig. But then I saw how big the stage was. I was like, oh, this might be really fun. And then they started showing me the costumes. And then she said, okay, you got 17 songs to learn, 17, you got a week to do it because we're going to be in Japan in a week. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I called Bill Medley because I knew we had a show that night. And he said, put me on the phone with her. And I said, I don't even know how much she's paying me. And he goes, you know, let me talk to her. And then he said, you're going to work. He got back on the phone. He's like, you're going to work with her. Like that.
Was it because like the financial, like the money was going to be so much greater to go on the Who's That Girl tour
than what he could give me.
Than staying in Vegas. Point, yeah.
Well, it wasn't even so much staying in Vegas. For me, at that point, music was still just a gig. It was not like I wasn't trying to be a recording artist. It was really, music for me was always, you know, just to pay the bills. And because I grew up, I just had a wealth of like a lot of songs underneath my belt because everybody in my family, for the most part, that's you sang. Not necessarily for professional reasons, just what you did around the house. Who knows? Poverty breeds lots of talent. Who knows? But the reality is, like, you know, he told me, you know, look, and I didn't know it was going to last a long time. It was on the tour that I found out I was replacing a friend of mine and all these things. And, you know, so, you know, a lot of stuff came up for me, and she and I would have long conversations in her trailer about, you know, because I was just doing what Nikki does, come in, learn it fast, do it. And she's like, hey, you gotta, when I say something, you gotta listen to me. And I'm like, well, okay, I'll listen to you if what you're saying is right. And I'm like, oh no, Nikki, this is her gig. This is her gig. Stop. But because of that, I think we became really good buddies during that time. And it also reminded me what I did and did not want as far as this music business is concerned. When I saw it starting to blow up for her and watching how people treated her differently and all that kind of stuff, you're like, okay. And I remember sitting in the bed even in Truth or Dare, and her talking about, sometimes I don't know if I really want this. And I was like, I'm clear that this is not where I'm going.
I was literally just going to say, it's funny. Before I even reached out to the two of you, the other week, it was pouring rain here on a Friday night here in New York. And I was like, you know what? Like, I had nothing to do. I'm like, you know what? I just want to watch Truth or Dare for like the 50th time in my life. I've seen this movie thousands of times, obviously. And I put it on. And of course, nowadays, like half the time you're watching TV or watching a movie, you're on the phone. The phone was down the entire time. And I mean, that's just sort of that's a random note. I remember, like, I didn't look at the phone once, but also I remember that now. Then once I started reaching out to you guys, I remember that scene where you're talking about, like, do you want to be a star? And she says to you, she's almost like she's like, can't believe that you. She's like, come on, you don't want to be a star, and you're like, I don't think so.
And for me, what was coming up for me was like,
you didn't know if you wanted it. Yeah.
Well, for me too, remember, words have power. And for me, I know for sure, maybe it's because growing up with jazz musicians who were never going to be celebrities, or gospel artists that were never necessarily celebrities at that point, they were always stars to me. It's like, and so the idea of, I thought I was hearing was, don't you want to be a celebrity? And for me, it was like, nah, I'm not really feeling all that. I don't know if I want all that comes along with that. Now, as far as I'm concerned, and maybe this is where I work through the Aries woman in me with a Leo rising. Remember, she's Leo too. So we had a lot of that energy going, whereas like
a lot of fire. Aries, Leo rising, a lot of fire.
And I grew up with a mom and a dad who said, you are a star. It's like, I don't have to go chase after that. That's already here for me. It's like, to me, it's like, my light is to shine. I'm to shine my light. Now, the whole celebrity getting in the restaurants fast and people kissing your butt and da-da-da, it's like, none of that was anything I ever dreamed of or thought that was part of what I needed my life to have a successful life. Now, the other thing you might notice in the Truth or Dare movie is that none of us had a phone. None of us were, ever posting. We weren't, and none of that stuff was even part of our bandwidth.
Well, it didn't exist. It wasn't an option.
Yeah. And maybe it did for the 1%ers because, my doctor had a phone. There were certain people that had phones, the big gigantic phones. But so for me, I was still working on learning, because I'm such a hyper person, learning to try to be present, really, really be present because I know that none of it necessarily lasts.